The image of Alex Eala walking into the Porsche arena surrounded by a massive sea of screaming fans is completely shaking up all of Germany this week. But if you think she is just a lucky young player who managed to sneak into the main draw, you have already fallen into the trap of a perfectly executed strategy. What you are witnessing right now in Stuttgart is not just a simple fan reception, it is the absolute weaponization of pure queen energy. Think about the reality of this situation for a very brief second. We have a 20-year-old athlete from Southeast Asia who just took the highly coveted main draw spot after Zheng Qinwen had to withdraw due to injury. Most young players in that exact situation would quietly take their place, stay entirely out of the spotlight, and anxiously prepare for a brutally tough first-round match. Not Alex Eala. Instead, she stepped off the plane and instantly manipulated the attention of the most prestigious tournament in Europe. She created an absolute media frenzy before she even stepped onto the red clay to hit a single tennis ball. The crowds waiting for her outside the venue were absolutely deafening. People were treating her like a massive global pop star arriving for a sold-out stadium tour instead of a rising tennis prodigy showing up for a first-round match. Hundreds of fans were waving massive flags, crying and chanting her name loudly, creating a beautiful scene of absolute chaos. This is a level of incredible psychological dominance that we rarely ever see in the modern WTA Tour. She is not just here to play a few tennis matches and quietly collect a first-round paycheck. She is clearly here to conquer the entire event from the inside out. The energy shift in the city was immediate and completely undeniable. To understand exactly why the notoriously strict German press is suddenly calling a 20-year-old tennis player an absolute queen, we have to look very closely at the invisible weapon she brought with her to Stuttgart. Stuttgart is not like any other tennis tournament in the world. This is the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix. It is the absolute ultimate territory of the European tennis elite, featuring highly exclusive indoor clay courts and extremely wealthy corporate sponsors. The crowds here are historically very traditional and notoriously reserved. You usually just hear polite golf claps echoing through the pristine indoor arena. You absolutely do not hear wild, roaring crowds chanting a player name for hours on end while completely blocking the traffic outside the stadium walls. It is a venue that traditionally demands quiet, respect, and strict order from everyone who enters. But then Alex Eala arrived, and she completely shattered every single unwritten rule of this elite venue in the absolute best way possible. The visual and audio contrast was massive. When she secured that dramatic main draw spot, everyone in the building expected her to just blend into the background and be quietly grateful for the sudden massive opportunity. The tournament officials expected her to play the familiar role of the humble and quiet rookie who is just happy to be invited to the big dance. Instead, she walked straight onto the main practice court to hit with the current world number one, Iga Swiatek. And she did it with a level of undeniable swagger and intense focus that left tournament directors and veteran tennis analysts completely speechless. There was absolutely zero fear in her eyes as she traded incredibly heavy ground strokes with the absolute best player on the entire planet. She did not look like a lucky alternate who was intimidated by the massive moment. She carried herself like she already owned the entire arena. She was hitting the heavy yellow ball with incredible depth and massive spin, perfectly adapting to the notoriously tricky indoor clay conditions of Germany. Even the highly conservative German sports media had to immediately surrender to her magnetic presence. Major and highly respected publications like the Stuttgarter Zeitung quickly published massive articles admitting that this young woman brings a completely different and wildly electric energy to the European tennis tour. They heavily praised her relentless baseline playing style and her incredibly high tennis IQ. But far more importantly, they realized she is completely breaking down the old, rigid standards of European tennis right in front of their very eyes. She is proving to the entire world that you do not need to wait your turn in the dark shadows if you have the supreme talent and the massive aura to demand the spotlight right here and right now. Watching her command that incredible level of respect from both the passionate fans and the top-tier sports media makes you realize we are watching the birth of a true global icon. If you are getting absolute goosebumps seeing a Southeast Asian player completely take over one of the hardest European tournaments, and you want to keep following her incredible rise to the absolute top, make sure you join our community right now, so we can watch this historic journey unfold together. But her undeniable confidence on the practice court is really just one half of the entire fascinating story. The other half is a massive financial earthquake that is currently shaking the lucrative television contracts of the WTA to their absolute core. Here is what the experts rarely tell you on live television. The physical presence of Alex Eala directly skyrocketed the commercial value of this tournament in the massive Asian market. They hung her giant poster front and center at the Porsche Arena for a very specific reason. They did not do it just to be nice to a young player from Southeast Asia. They did it because they know she is a walking magnet for millions of invisible dollars. When you talk about her massive impact, you are no longer just talking about beautiful backhands and high serve percentages. You are talking about a massive shift in global broadcast rights and extremely high-level corporate sponsorships. Let us break down the real economics happening right now behind the closed doors of the WTA. When a player with her massive regional influence reaches the main draw of a premium European clay court event, the television ratings in her home country absolutely explode. Global luxury sponsors pay incredibly close attention to those exact numbers. The organizers in Stuttgart are brilliant business minds who understand global market trends. They instantly recognize that featuring her heavily in their promotional materials opens up a direct pipeline to an extremely lucrative and rapidly growing demographic. She brings a massive, completely untapped audience right to their doorstep. That is true commercial power. That is exactly how you force a legendary European tournament to reshape their entire marketing strategy overnight. But the financial aspect is really only the first layer of this massive revelation. The most terrifying weapon she possesses is what elite tennis insiders are now calling the virtual home court advantage. Professional tennis is a brutally lonely sport. When you play a major match thousands of miles away from your home country, you usually have to fight against a very hostile local crowd. It breaks many incredibly talented players mentally. They simply crack under the heavy pressure of a stadium, loudly cheering against them on every single point. Alex completely bypasses this intense psychological hurdle. Thanks to the massive and incredibly passionate Filipino diaspora living across Europe, she practically turns every single foreign stadium into a loud, energetic version of Manila. Imagine being her opponent right now. You are a highly ranked European player expecting a quiet, comfortable match on your home continent. You walk onto the indoor clay court and suddenly realize the entire stadium is completely painted in different colors. The crowd is not politely clapping for you. They are screaming at the top of their lungs for the young woman standing on the other side of the net. You suddenly become the villain in your own backyard. That is a massive psychological burden to carry into a high-stakes tennis match. The constant noise and the sheer volume of her supporters create a suffocating atmosphere for anyone trying to break her serve. She absorbs all that chaotic energy and channels it directly into her aggressive baseline game. Every single point she wins sounds like a Grand Slam championship moment. Every mistake her opponent makes is met with absolute silence. It is a highly calculated psychological warfare happening right in plain sight in the middle of Germany. Are you starting to see the true brilliance of her approach? However, generating massive profit for the tournament and completely manipulating the crowd volume is just one piece of the puzzle. How she entirely manipulates the strict gaze of the conservative German sports media is an entirely different level of dominance. And here is the crucial point that will completely change your entire perspective on her current career trajectory. Major television networks like Sky Sport Deutschland did not hesitate for a single second to put the massive appeal of Ella on the exact same scale as the absolute biggest names in the sport. They are literally comparing her raw magnetic pull to established global superstars like Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek. Think about the massive gravity of that statement. We are talking about a player who just entered the main draw as a late replacement being placed on the exact same high pedestal as multiple Grand Slam champions. This is the absolute core definition of Queen energy. She deliberately positions herself as a true global icon every single time she steps out of the locker room. She does not act like a promising rookie who needs more time to develop her game. She behaves like she has already conquered the entire tour. This intense warrior aura does not just come out of nowhere by accident. You have to remember her deep roots training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. That specific elite environment does not just teach you how to hit a heavy topspin forehand on red clay. It physically and mentally programs you to become an absolute gladiator on the tennis court. She spent her critical teenage years learning directly from the ultimate master of physical and mental suffering. That elite training background gives her a massive level of tactical intelligence and an incredibly thick skin. The academy teaches relentless pursuit of every single ball and demands that you never show weakness to your opponent. When Alex walks onto the court, she carries that exact Spanish clay court philosophy. She intimidates older players because she refuses to yield a single inch of the baseline. Her footwork is precise, and her eye contact is fierce. She commands the space around her effortlessly. When she stands in front of the flashing cameras or answers difficult tactical questions from veteran sports journalists, she never stumbles. Her posture is always perfectly straight. Her answers are incredibly sharp and highly calculated. She looks exactly like a seasoned champion who has done this a million times before. She is completely flipping the traditional script of professional tennis right before our eyes. I am genuinely curious about how you view this massive mental shift she has created on the tour. Do you think this intense royal aura and the incredibly heavy media comparisons to top players give her an unfair psychological advantage before the match even begins? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below because I really want to know if you think this massive hype train is helping her game or secretly adding way too much pressure to her shoulders. The fans who stood outside the Porsche Arena for hours did not show up just to support a young underdog trying to survive the first round. They showed up because they fundamentally understand they are witnessing a major historical shift in real time. They are not watching a player learn the ropes of the professional circuit. They are watching a rapidly ascending star completely redefine what a modern tennis era looks like. When you have the raw technical skills to back up the massive media hype, you become an incredibly dangerous threat to the entire tennis establishment. You cannot simply fake this kind of intense royal aura. You cannot buy this specific level of deep respect with clever public relations tricks or expensive social media marketing campaigns. You have to step onto the dirt and physically prove it by making the most conservative newspapers in Europe completely change their tone. You have to force the traditional tennis establishment to rewrite their own rules just to accommodate your undeniable presence. But talk is cheap, and media hype can fade instantly after one bad performance on the court. To truly understand the terrifying reality of her massive power, we have to look at the undeniable proof she is leaving behind in Germany. If you need the clearest possible proof that this royal status is completely real, you have to look directly at the most demanding sports journalists in all of Europe. The legendary German newspaper Bild did something they almost never do for a visiting rookie. They officially crowned her the Philippine Diamond. That specific phrase is not just a casual compliment. It is an incredibly rare and highly expensive validation from a publication that is notoriously harsh and deeply critical of foreign athletes. The German sports media establishment does not hand out royal titles easily. When they crown you a diamond, they are fully admitting that you are the absolute brightest and most valuable object in the entire building. They watched her practice on that pristine indoor clay. They analyzed her relentless movement on the baseline and her incredibly clean ball striking. They concluded that she possesses an absolute superstar quality that simply cannot be taught by any tennis coach in the world. You either have that magnetic diamond quality, or you absolutely do not. The visual statistics and digital numbers coming out of Stuttgart this week are absolutely mind-blowing. The massive crowds that gathered just to watch her hit practice balls against Swiatek broke all previous tournament records for practice court attendance. People were standing shoulder to shoulder just to catch a brief glimpse of her warm-up routine. The digital growth of the tournament is even more staggering. The official social media engagement numbers for the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix completely skyrocketed within hours of her arrival. Every single post and video featuring Alex generated traffic numbers that the tournament organizers had never seen before in their entire history. She became the absolute central gravitational force of the entire event. The tournament media team quickly realized that simply posting a 10-second clip of her tying her shoes would generate more global interaction than a full match highlight reel from other seeded players. The local German fans who have been watching this tournament for decades are completely mesmerized by her approach to the game. They are used to seeing players politely smile and wave from a distance. Alex does not just wave. She looks directly into the camera lenses with a piercing intensity that demands your full, undivided attention. When the tournament organizers saw the initial spike in ticket sales, they immediately moved her practice sessions to the larger show courts. They had absolutely no choice. The sheer volume of fans demanding to see her hit practice balls created a logistical nightmare for the security teams. That is the undeniable mathematical proof of her queen energy at work. This level of massive influence carries an incredible symbolic weight for the future of the sport. Alex Eala has effectively become the perfect cultural and athletic bridge in the modern tennis world. On one side, you have the extreme physical endurance and the heavy topspin baseline strategy that defines elite European clay court tennis. On the other side, you have the relentless hard work and the intense cultural pride that defines Asian sports fans. She seamlessly fuses these two massive worlds together perfectly. When she plays, she is not just representing her home country. She is representing an entirely new demographic of tennis fans who are finally seeing themselves reflected in a true global tennis icon. She is proving that Asian players do not have to be quiet and reserved on the global stage. They can be loud and they can be demanding. They can completely dominate the media narrative at the most prestigious events in Europe without ever asking for permission. This massive wave of recognition from the elite German media has officially established a completely new power structure on the WTA Tour. The older established players are suddenly looking over their shoulders in the locker room. They realize they are no longer just fighting against a very talented youngster with a powerful left-handed forehand. They are going up against a massive global brand with millions of highly vocal supporters and the financial backing of the biggest luxury markets on the planet. The intimidation factor is no longer just about her tennis skills, it is about the sheer volume of her presence. But this incredible level of massive global attention is a very dangerous double-edged sword. The same beautiful crown that makes you a queen also carries a crushing physical weight. The events unfolding in Stuttgart have definitively proven that Alex Eala is entirely ready to carry the massive burden of being the global face of the WTA. She has effortlessly conquered the strict European media, and she has manipulated the tournament economics to her absolute advantage. The queen energy she brought to Germany was a highly effective psychological weapon that completely altered the reality of the tournament before the first official match even started. But the harsh reality of professional tennis is that the bright flashing lights of the red carpet eventually fade. The loud screaming crowds eventually have to quiet down when the umpire calls for play. Here is the ultimate secret to her unbreakable psychological armor that very few people truly understand. The elite training philosophy at the Rafa Nadal Academy did not just give her a heavy topspin forehand. That brutal training environment intentionally placed her in high-stress situations every single day to build an impenetrable steel shell around her mind. While European players are suddenly feeling the massive pressure of her media presence, Alex is completely insulated from the noise. The Academy taught her how to absorb massive external pressure and convert it directly into cold, calculated aggression on the court. That mental steel is the exact reason why she does not flinch when stepping onto the dirt alongside the world number one. The older generation of tennis analysts are finally starting to realize that the rules of the game have fundamentally changed. You can no longer just be a quiet grinder who wins matches in the shadows. To truly dominate the modern era, you have to conquer the mental battlefield before you ever step onto the physical court. The massive expectations she has built around herself now demand an immediate physical response. The indoor clay courts of the Porsche Arena are incredibly unforgiving, and they demand absolute physical perfection. all the royal energy in the world will not help you return a massive kick serve on match point. The ultimate test is whether she can translate this massive off-court dominance into a decisive, devastating victory inside the lines of the tennis court. The entire world watched her command the media like a seasoned veteran. Now they desperately want to see if she can swing the racket like a true Grand Slam champion. The stage is perfectly set, and the massive global audience is waiting with bated breath. Can she actually turn this incredible royal aura into a physical championship trophy this week in Stuttgart? Will this massive media pressure elevate her game to a completely terrifying new level? We are going to track every single aggressive move she makes on the clay courts this week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because you absolutely do not want to miss the thrilling answer to that question.